This is Miss Liz from Finkelstein Memorial Library, and I'm coming here with another book talk. This time we're going to review 5 middle grade books. The first one is called The Newspaper Club by Beth Vrabel. The Newspaper Club is about Nellie Murrow, an 11-year-old girl reporter who is both named after Nellie Bly, who was an early American woman journalist during the late 1800s, and Edward Murrow, a famous real-life journalist, active during World War II. So Nellie is also a daughter of 2 former newspaper reporters, and because the newspaper where her parents worked had layoffs, that means they lost their jobs. Her dad moves temporarily to Asia, where his new job is, and Nellie and her mom moved to Sleepy Beaver Creek, Maine, where not much happens. Nellie has trouble making friends and would rather keep people at a distance, so she goes to a park where she can kind of talk to her dad by herself. Suddenly, she sees a man talking to a police officer saying that he was attacked and there was stuff stolen from him, and a couple other people come by too and saying that they lost stuff too. Stuff was stolen from them as well. But then Nellie thinks like a reporter, so she's got to investigate. Something is happening at the park, but what? All of the fake online news and rumors are clouding the real news. Nellie wants to break the story, but she can't do it alone. So she starts a club and starts the town's first independent newspaper, and it's called the Cub Report. They are cub reporters, so it's like junior reporters. I really enjoyed Nellie's voice, the descriptions of her friends Tom and Min, and even though she was reluctant to make friends, they turned out to be really good ones. And I really enjoyed reading about this preteen experience. I like that the kids needed to be listened to by adults and not ignored because they are kids. There is also a sequel to this book called The Cubs Get the Scoop. And since this newspaper club book was a fun book, check out the sequel. The next book I am book talking about is Indian No More by Charlene McManis with Traci Sorell. Imagine if that happened to you, that the government told you that your family's country no longer existed and that you were all Americans and that you had to move. What would you do? This actually happened in the 1950s when the U.S. government legally terminated, and I say in quotes, terminated, many Native American tribes. That means they ended them. They were no longer considered tribes at the time. They refer in this book to Indians, whereas we use the term Native American nowadays. And the government forced them to move off their lands and usually into the cities. Indian No More is a historical book based on this event and the author's life as a child and teenager. Our main character is an 8-year-old girl named Regina Pettit who lives with her younger sister Teresa, but everyone calls her Pee-wee. They also live with their mom, dad, grandma, who is known as Chich, and grandpa Chup. Their family belongs to the Umpqua tribe in northern Oregon and are forced by the U.S. government to relocate from Oregon, and they end up moving to Los Angeles. And for the reason that their tribe and many other tribes were terminated, meaning that they are told they no longer exist. They are forced to leave their land and can't afford to buy it back, so they move. Sadly, Chup, their grandpa, dies before they leave because they couldn't wait for a doctor to visit. Regina's father wants to make the best of the move, and now that they'll finally be Americans, so he'll go to trade school, he'll get a good job, and be able to support the family better. But her mother and grandma are sad and angry about it, and that it denies their identity as Indians. They speak a language called Chinookawawa, and which is a jargon that several tribes in the Pacific Northwest speak. And it helps Regina's grandma tells her stories in this language. She also helps to keep her and Pee-wee and Regina connected to their heritage. It's tough for the family at first because the house where they moved to on 58th Street needs a lot of work to clean up, but after a while it looks nicer with grandma's crocheted doilies to cover the old furniture and fresh curtains at the windows. Regina and Pee-wee eventually make friends with children on their block and in school, and things start to look up for the family with her father's good job, better food on the table, and even a new car. However, the family has some ugly encounters with racism, and they are reminded that they are still Indians, not fully Americans. This is an excellent book tackling difficult subjects fairly easily, and the author and later co-author made sure the book had an authentic voice to the Umpqua and Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, Oregon, where the author was from. There is a glossary of Chinagwawa words, a section on the historical background, and photos from the author. Sadly, the author, Charlene McManis, passed away before the book was finished, but her friend Traci Sorell agreed beforehand to finish the book and make sure it was authentic to the author's tribal background and author voice. I highly recommend this book, so go read it. Our next book is called Efrain Divided by Ernesto Cisneros. This book reflects real-life events about the U.S. government's, again, a strict policy of deporting parents and other family members back to their home country, even when their children are born here, but their parents are undocumented. This book tackles this scary real-life problem well. 12-year-old Efrain Nava's Ama is a superwoman or soper woman named after the delicious Mexican sopas his mother often prepares. Both Ama and his father, whom he calls Appa, work hard all day to support the family, so much of the time he and his younger brother Max and his sister Mia, who are both in kindergarten, are left on their own with Efrain to look after them. But Efrain worries about his parents. Although he's American-born, his parents are undocumented, and local chisme, or gossip, indicates that families like his are in danger of having their members being suddenly taken away to be deported. Efrain's worst nightmare comes true one day when Ama doesn't return from work and is deported across the border to Tijuana, Mexico. Now more than ever, Efrain has to step up, act as an adult, and channel his inner soper boy to help take care of and try and reunite his family. There are Spanish words used throughout the book and also a glossary at the end of this book to translate those words. This is a great book, realistically written to introduce kids who won't face the situation to the gravity and heartbreak that so many kids do face. And for those kids who may or have faced it, they will finally see their stories in a book. So please read this book. Next we have Understood Betsy by Dorothy Canfield Fisher. This book is an oldie but a goodie, a real classic. My late mom, mine, gave this book to me when I was in elementary school, and it became one of my favorites. This book was published back in 1917, over 100 years ago, so I'm certain my mom read it when she was a child too. I would say this is a historical novel. The main character is 9-year-old Elizabeth Ann, whose parents died when she was a baby, so her Aunt Harriet and her daughter, Aunt Frances, take her in and raise her. Aunt Frances spends all her time nurturing Elizabeth Ann, but also majorly overprotecting her, always wanting to know her thoughts and so on. The result is that Elizabeth Ann becomes very nervous and scared of everything, and thin. In fact, her aunts are nervous and thin too. They cry about stuff and they can't eat. They also don't trust their other relatives, of which they have many relatives. One day, Aunt Frances summons the doctor to see Elizabeth Ann, and he says there's nothing wrong with her. Just eat more and go outside and play, until the doctor hears Aunt Harriet cough. Once he examines Aunt Harriet, he says she must go to where it is warm and rest because she is very sick. Aunt Frances suddenly sends Elizabeth Ann off to other relatives while she goes away with Aunt Harriet to take care of her. Elizabeth Ann ends up getting sent to her relatives, the Putneys, which are Aunt Abigail and Cousin Ann, whom Aunt Frances and Aunt Harriet hate. Ultimately, this turns out to be a really good thing for Elizabeth Ann because she's forced to do things on her own. She eats nourishing food and begins to grow up. She becomes someone who is truly understood. And I would kind of recommend this along with the Little House series books, but this is a bit more complicated in the way it's written, but it is also a very good book. Next we have, actually this is the last book I'm recommending. It's called Manana Land by Pam Muñoz Ryan, and Mañana is Spanish for tomorrow. So the book is about Max, and his full name is Maximilio Feliciano Cordoba. He is a boy who is almost 12 years old. He's 11. He lives with his father and grandfather known as Buelo. They live in a town called Santa Maria. Maximilian, who goes by Max, is an only child, and he knows his mother left the family when he was a baby, but he doesn't know why. His father and Buelo won't talk about it or avoid the question, so it is a mystery. The other boys in his class sometimes tease him about it, but his good friend Chewy does not. Max's father and Buelo were also well-known soccer coaches, but his father now works on building bridges out of stone and becomes well-known that way. There is a yearly soccer competition in town, and everyone wants to make the team, but they need to prove they live in Santa Maria and have a birth certificate, which Max doesn't have. There is also a mysterious stone fortress in ruins called La Reina Gigante, and it's called the Big Queen. Sorry, my accent is not very good. That is rumored to have hidden people who are persecuted by the government. Ironically, Max's father gets some of his stone to build bridges from there, La Reina Gigante. When Max starts asking questions, Buelo tells him he will answer them mañana, meaning tomorrow. Maybe Max needs to go to Manana Land to find out. Read about Max and his family's adventures in this captivating tale of magic realism. It's a very good book. So I hope you enjoy these book talks, and check out these books and many others at Finkelstein Memorial Library. We look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.